What is up, guys? We are back with another versus series. Today we got the S20 FE, the POCO X3 Pro, and the LG V60. Again, these are phones that I get asked which one, should I buy. So I'm really gonna start covering these a lot more because I constantly get that question a lot here. So these are very interesting devices with all very unique things about them because they all have pretty close processors. The V60 and S20 FE both have the Snapdragon 865 chip. This has the 860 chip, but this is an older flagship, basically a flagship phone, the S20 FE as well. And then the POCO X3 is pretty interesting. It's a mid-range kind of budget phone. You can pick it up for $250, brand new. These the S20 FE is kind of expensive. It's like $350 to $400, and then the V60 is just really cheap. Depending on if you get it on eBay, you can get one just like mine's for $250. It'll be locked though, but if you want unlocked, it'll usually cost you around like $300, which is still pretty cheap as well too. So let's go ahead and dive into it. And first, let's look at the build quality of these phones here. So I think the V60 kind of takes the cake pretty easily as far as build quality. It just feels extremely nice. It's a full glass and metal phones. This is a plastic back, metal rails. This is a all plastic phone. So the V60 just has that more premium feel to it. Guys, there's also something that you'll note here. You have a headphone jack on the POCO X3 Pro. You have a quad DAC or headphone jack on the V60, but no headphone jack on the S20 FE. So do keep that in mind. If you're somebody that has to have wired audio, or if you want high quality audio, the V60 is really the way to go. Honestly, the V60 has the best speakers out of the bunch and that quad DAC, so it really makes it the best audio device in general. It's got the best haptics as well too. As far as like the size, as we can see here, V60 is much bigger, right? But the S20 FE is probably the smallest and the thinnest phone, so it's the lightest phone as well too. Which is really nice. So I think they all look great. If I was gonna like go in order, I would say V60 first as far as design, S20 FE, then the POCO. The POCO just kind of has like a really strange design. It's just a really unique design, but not, it hasn't really grown on me like that. Also, fingerprint scanners on here. The S20 FE kind of has the best fingerprint scanner. It's really easy to get into the device. The V60 is just not as good as the S20 FE. It's just not as fast, but it is very accurate. But you kind of have to press down a little bit harder on the screen. The POCO X3 Pro actually has my favorite implementation. It's got the physical fingerprint scanner in the home button, which I think is the best way to do it. It's my favorite thing. When you unlock this phone, it really feels like you don't actually think about unlocking it. It just kind of unlocks, right? That's one thing I really like about this phone here. So let's go ahead and talk about the displays here, because this is actually pretty important here. Alright, so if you consume a lot of content or you watch a lot of videos on your phone, movies, whatever, which display is the best here? So first off, let's go over display sizes. 6.67 inch on the POCO, 6.8 inch. The V60 has the biggest display. You have a 6.5 inch on the S20 FE. 1080p, 1080p, 1080p. There's a massive difference here though. So the S20 FE to me has the best display. It's one of my favorite display sizes at 6.5 inches. But not only that, it has the Super AMOLED display at 120 Hz. The POCO has an IPS display at 120 Hz. The V60 has an OLED display at 60 Hz, so it does not have any high refresh rate on the V60. The V60 also kind of has an outdated water drop notch on here, as well as chunkier bezels. These have the punch hole. So as far as displays, the S20 FE is just going to be the overall better display because it just has the 120 Hz along with the Super AMOLED. My problem with the POCO X3 Pro is that the display is not as bright outdoors. These two displays do a great job outdoors. The V60's display is really almost kind of tied in terms of quality with the S20 FE. It just doesn't have that 120 Hz. But they're all very good displays. But like I said, if you need a big phone, obviously you go with the V60 next. But the POCO X3 Pro It's got a decent display. I really like that this phone has the 120 hertz, especially at the price point. It is very silky smooth. So it really just comes down to preference, but I would say S20 FE as far as display, then the V60, then the POCO there. All right, let's talk about these specs a little bit more here. Again, Snapdragon 865, 860, and the 865 on the V60. Basically, they're getting around the same scores. As you can see, V60 comes out just a little bit ahead in the single and multi-core score. But as far as speed, you won't really have to worry about speed because they're all kind of similar. Yes, the POCO and the S20 FE, it does feel faster with the 120 hertz scrolling. But if you go ahead and open some apps, they should all kind of be on par here. Open Subway Surf. V60 and S20 FE pretty much tied there. Open Instagram. S20 FE looked like it got there first. But as you can see how close these devices are. Even though the V60 doesn't have 120 hertz, it's very smooth with scrolling as well too. Alright, so gaming performance on here is basically the same. They all can do HDR Extreme on PUBG. They all can do Ultra as well too. And they all do a fantastic job with gaming. I would say really the best gaming device here would be the V60, simply because you have that dual screen case. So you can attach a dual screen case and it'll just take your gaming experience up a notch if you're really serious about gaming. It can really turn the phone into like a little joypad as well too. So I like the V60, but also, you know, the POCO and S20 FE, they do have that 120 hertz. So games that are compatible with it, so you'll see some games running at 90 hertz. You know, you'll be able to play it on these phones, no problem. But as far as gaming performance, all of these do a great job. I would say the POCO and the V60 are my favorites because the battery life is better on those phones. They have massive batteries at 5,000 milliamps pretty much. So, you know, they all do a fantastic job, all very powerful. So you really can't go wrong as far as gaming with these phones. So whichever phone you get, you'll be really happy with gaming performance on these guys. Alright, so are there any features that these phones have that the other ones don't? So let's go ahead and talk about the highlights with these phones as far as feature-wise. A feature that I think is extremely slept on is the IR blaster in the POCO X3 Pro. I always have this phone with me simply because it has the IR blaster. A lot of phones do not have IR blasters anymore. And Xiaomi, I think, is like one of the only companies really putting them in their phones. Basically, if you want to control your TV, monitors, air conditioner, you can do that with the POCO, and it's just so much easier. I wish it had it on everything because you always have your phone with you, and you always lose the remote controller. So it just having it built into the phone, it just makes so much sense, and I absolutely love it. So that's one of my favorite things. All these phones have a lot of the same features, IP ratings, they all have NFC. The S20 FE does pack a lot with the software, with the One UI. You have the reverse wireless charging on here, so if I want to charge some earbuds with this phone or pretty much anything, another phone. Secure folder, Samsung desktop support, extremely slept on feature. I might do a video about that alone. So there's just a lot to like about One UI, and the V60 really its standout feature is that quad DAC like we talked about, and also the dual screen case for the ultimate multitasking experience there. So let's go ahead and hop into image quality. So this is where the POCO is not really that strong, even though it has a lot of cameras, and on paper, like the specs, you know, you're like, wow. You know, it's got the ultra wide, your 2x, 5x, 10x lens on here, but image quality is just not as good as the S20 FE and the V60. It takes pretty good photos in good lighting conditions. I'm not saying it's not a bad camera by any means. It's a very good camera at this price point. So I do want to go ahead and make sure I clarify that. But if you were looking for the best camera, I think my favorite camera here is still the S20 FE. It just takes phenomenal photos. The photos can come out a little bit oversaturated, but this one does have the ultra wide 3x, and the image processing that Samsung does with this phone, it really does take like flagship quality photos to me. It is really, really, really good. I do prefer the V60 sort of natural color. Samsung can sort of make photos look very like vibrant, colorful, and it's not like super accurate to real life. So I sort of like to take shots like very accurate to real life. So I would say like it's a toss up between the S20 FE and the V60. V60, you know, talked about this phone a lot. Takes great photos as well. So just awesome image quality on all of these phones. But like I said, if you're going for the best camera, you would go for the V60 or the S20 FE for sure here. So lastly, to touch on battery life, this is where the POCO kind of shines. It has awesome battery life. You can easily get a day out of this phone. You can get a day out of all of these phones, but the V60 really does really just kill, you know, these phones in battery life, especially standby time. It just does an excellent job. That could be because the V60 does not have the 120 hertz, so it saves a lot of battery life like that. So I really think that's probably what's going on here. But like I said, battery life, if you need a phone that's going to last you a very long time, you're going with the V60 easily. And just so you guys know, I got the brightness up, but you know, you can see the difference between the IPS display. Look at it. I don't even have this all the way up. Look at that. Look how bright this is. Look how bright these are compared to the IPS display. All right, we're at max volume on all of these guys. Let's go ahead and start with the V60. So as far as sound quality, the V60 does have the louder speaker. That's why, you know, I said earlier that this phone just kills it in the audio department. And then it would be the S20 FE. It just had a more balanced sound there with the bass, the mids and highs. It just sounds more balanced than the POCO. The POCO sounds good, but the bass is not as balanced on the POCO speakers as the S20 FE or the V60. So yeah, that is pretty much it. So these are awesome phones. All of them have very unique things about them that I think a lot of people can appreciate. So be sure to let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.